I seem to be like blinking a lot and unnecessarily, that's what's going on. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for episode 38 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host Kristen and I'm here to talk to you about what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about all things knitting related and knitting adjacent and yarn related and probably not so knitting and yarn adjacent sometimes. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I am the designer behind the Media Peruana Designs knitting patterns. I am also a knitting instructor and all-around knitting enthusiast. I am coming to you from the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., where I live with my husband, a very tall man from Peru, and my two children, JJ, who is 8, and Ollie, who is 6. When I'm not knitting, occasionally does happen, you can find me vegetable gardening, baking, drinking wine, watching Orioles baseball, but it's mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. So today, you can kind of see me, I am wearing my long time pullover. This is a pullover of my own design. It is a saddle shoulder, which means you knit this and this first. You pick up stitches for the front and back, work them separately to the armholes, join in the round, and work down to the bottom. This is done in all over what is unfortunately named lice stitch, which is just kind of a little polka dot. Obviously, I've used that same color in the saddles, the collar, the sleeve cuffs, and I've added short row shaping so that this little under hem here is shorter in the front and then curves down in the back. And if I get close, you can see that the top layer has just kind of a rolled hem. You pick this up underneath. This pullover is knit in Little Fox yarn Bosa, which is a really luxurious blend of wool with, I believe, some yak and some silk. I will definitely double check that. I will definitely link the yarn in the show notes, and you can find the pattern itself either on Ravelry in my Ravelry shop or in my PayHip shop, both of which are linked in the information box down below. All right, I'm gonna kick things off in this episode talking about all of the things that I have on the needles. But the first thing I'm gonna tell you is that I'm having a problem with my contacts for the last couple of days. I don't know what's going on. They just feel like they don't fit right anymore, kind of suddenly. They're dry, they're a little itchy. Could be allergies, I'm not sure. But if I seem to be like blinking a lot and unnecessarily, that's what's going on. So right now this eye is doing okay. This one, it just seems a little cloudy. I don't know, I've cleaned it multiple times. It's a brand new lens, I just put it in 3 days ago. So I apologize if I seem to be blinking a lot. It's not intentional, it's my contacts. Let's start talking about what we're actually here to talk about, which is knitting. So I have all kinds of things on the needles. What order to go in? All right, let's start with this one. So I started a new project for my Make 9. This is my cute little swatch to start. This is the swatch for my Ridgeview tee, which is a pattern by Carrie Bloomer of Carrie Knits. I will show you. I did not print, I guess I did print all the patterns, so you can kind of see, it's kind of getting blown out. There we go. And then my printer doesn't look great either. So it's a t-shirt with this kind of V-neck in the front with some garter ridge, and then this textured pattern over the rest of it. And I am making slight progress on the back. This is actually a pattern that is seamed. I haven't knit anything seamed in a while, so we'll see how that goes. So I have started on the back. I am using Brooklyn Tweed Dapple, which is a wool cotton blend, to make this a little bit of a lighter weight for the spring, as if I'm going to be done in time to wear it before it's 90 degrees. I've definitely showed you guys this yarn before, so you can see that the cotton and the wool take the color differently, which results in this dappled look to it. So I started the bag and I decided to use an alternating cable cast on, just getting a little bit blown out here. But this is there you go, a really nice cast on when you're working in 1x1 rib. It sort of gives a little bit of the impression, kind of like a tubular cast on, where, I don't know if you can see at the bottom, you know, sort of blends right into the hem, that V. And I will include a little linky dealy to, I have a tutorial for the alternating cable cast on, and I would definitely consider this for anything that you are knitting, starting from a 1x1 rib. So this is sort of a 1x1 faux rib. It's not stretchy like ribbing, it doesn't pull in like ribbing, but you do have alternating knits and purls. However, when you're working flat with the alternating cable cast on, what you have to remember is that you're going to be going knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl for your cast on, and then when you turn it, it's going to be reversed. And unfortunately, since this pattern goes right into a very specific pattern of knits and purls, all of my stitches were opposite, because it starts with the knit purl, and I had started that way for my cast on, which meant I had to work back purl knit, which is not the end of the world. I think I've made the adjustment okay. You can see there's some kind of shaping of the textured stitches here that seems to be working just fine. The only trouble is I have to remember to do it for the front. I mean, presumably I can write myself a note, but it's just one of those things where I have the sneaking suspicion that I'm going to be like, okay, I'm done the back, I'm going to start the front, I already know how to do this, and I'm going to forget that I have to do that. So hopefully I will not, and hopefully the front has a slightly different look than the back, because it has that, you know, the V-neck, but I think or hope that the bottom hem is roughly the same, so that's not a problem for me. So this is going just fine so far. I believe I have one more 4-row repeat to do from this initial shaping, and then I'll be moving on to something else. So that again is for my Make 9 2021. I am happy with the yarn so far. The pattern is very well written. I have a lot of stuff on the needles right now, so I really haven't been moving very quickly with that. But I am happy to have it started. Like I said, even though I picked sort of the lighter yarn so that I could wear it for spring, it's already halfway through April, and it usually gets hot here by the end of May, so probably will not actually be wearing it until the fall, but we'll see. Who knows? Sometimes we get those random cool days in the summer. You never know. So that's one thing that is on the needles. The other thing is that I went ahead and started the new sample for my Going Steady cardigan. This is a pattern that I released 2017, I want to say, maybe. It's getting really windy out. I believe 2017. And the yarn is now discontinued that I used in the original sample, and I've also have reworked the pattern to include sizes up to 6X. So I went ahead and got started. I am not in any rush, but I have a couple of people who are test knitting the larger sizes, so I figured I better be working along with them in case any issues come up, although the pattern already, the new sizes have been tech edited. So this is just a top-down raglan cardigan where the sleeves are worked in a reverse stockinette, and There are some stripes, big color block stripes on the sleeves, and when you work stripes in reverse stockinette, you get these little blips of color that pop through on the right side that just gives it a unique look that I really like. It is an open front cardigan with a V-neck. As you can see, just a little bit of the V-neck shaping here, and it has pockets and a big shawl collar. So my original intent was to do this entirely with this wool, this yarn, which is Knit Picks Simply Wool, and I've used this a few times now and I'm very happy with it. I keep saying I want to do a video about my favorite Knit Picks yarns because they're not all great, but some of them are really, I think, sort of better than you would expect for low-priced yarns, and they really do have some gems in there, and I want to do a video one of these days. But this is one of them, the Simply Wool. It is an eco wool, and it comes in all natural colors. It's undyed, so I got this for the main color. I got this for one of the contrast colors, which you can see is just a darker gray, and then somewhere around here, I got a marled skein, which is a combination of these two. That was my original idea, but then I was looking for something and I came across this random skein of yarn in my stash. This is Magpie Fibers Nest Worsted, and for whatever reason I only bought one skein. I want to say this color is called Twilight or something along those lines. I'll put a link in the show notes. So I don't know why I bought just one skein. I don't know what I was intending to do with just one skein. Yarn is a little pricey. I want to say that it's $30 a skein. So to do a whole sweater with this would be pretty pricey. But I was looking at it and I thought that it would go really well with these as one of the contrast colors for the stripes. And I think I have plenty for that. I think it's 200 or so yards per skein. So I think I'm going to do that. Instead of using the marled skein that I got, I think I'm going to go ahead and mix these three up. I think that's going to look really cute. And it's a nice way to use sort of a more, an indie dyed yarn that, again, to buy a whole sweater's worth, especially this kind of sweater, which is, it's designed to be a longer sweater with a big shawl collar. Even for the smaller sizes, that's going to be pretty hefty yardage. So for something that's $30 a skein, that would be pretty hefty. But just mixing it in for one contrast color, I think is going to give this a nice look. I'm so enamored with actually the way these go together. So I think they're going to be a nice combo. And then the rest of the yarn is this very reasonably priced, I want to say this is $7 a skein. Don't quote me on that. It might be more like 10 or 11. I might be mixing it up with something else, but regardless, it's at most a third of the cost of this one, which if you're buying a whole sweater quantity is maybe going to work better for you. Of course, if you have the means and want to splurge, this is another beautiful yarn. Magpie Fibers is based right here in Maryland. I've been to some of the studio open houses at Magpie Fibers, and they just opened a storefront in downtown Frederick that is going to sell some yarn, but also lots of other kind of haberdashery stuff, buttons and things like that. So I'm really excited to check that out once we're allowed to leave the house again. So I'm a big fan of Damie's yarn, and I'm really excited to sort of put this to use, since I have, again, no idea why I bought one skein of this. And it's getting a little blown out on the camera, but this color is just this kind of dusty purple pink, I believe. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's dyed over a gray instead of a white, and I think that's what gives it the look. But I really love this, so I'm excited to move forward with that project, if you are watching this and are interested in testing that sweater, you can find the original sample. You can go to my website and see what that looks like. You can find it on Ravelry or PayHip. And I'm looking for people to test sizes 2X to 6X. So if that sounds like you, you can hop over to my website and find my contact information over there and send me a message. I did recently finish a test knit, but I'm gonna hold off on showing you guys that finished knit until closer to the pattern release. But it is actually a two-part, a set of garments. And so I have started the second garment. This is the project that I'm doing with the linen yarn. I have just started on this. As you can see, I've cast on, I think I've knit 2 rounds, maybe. I've got about a month left to go. It is a pretty kind of classic minimalist garment. There's not a ton going on, so it's a lot of stockinette. Hopefully I can move through that kind of swiftly. The linen yarn, as I said before, usually can be pretty rough. This one is okay to work with. I may have some more comments on that. It's the garment that I finished. I feel like the fabric is skewing. And you can see this is a marled, I don't know if you can see because it's getting blown out of it. This is a marled yarn. So it seems to be twisting together plies of 2 different colors, which looks, the effect is really nice. I don't know maybe if it's overspun or maybe it has to do with the way that the yarn was wound. I didn't wind the yarn. When I ordered it, they had free winding services, so I asked them to do it for me because I hate winding yarn. And so they did. And when I did my swatch, I felt like the yarn was skewing. So when I was actually knitting, I tried to pull from the outside of the ball rather than the inside. But I feel like the fabric is a little skewed. We'll see. I haven't taken it off the blocking boards yet. And since this is linen, what I did is I washed it in the machine and then I dried it most of the way in the dryer, leaving it a little damp, and then I laid it out because I wanted it to have, you know, a nice shape, especially for those finished object photos. I probably won't do that every single time. But it was also important because I learned from my swatch that it was going to shrink up. And that's what I wanted. So I knit it to a larger gauge, knowing that it would shrink to the correct gauge. So, like I said, I haven't taken it off the blocking boards yet. I have not tried on the finished garment post-blocking, but I just felt like the fabric was kind of skewing a little bit, and I don't know what the deal is with that. So we'll see. Probably in the next podcast, maybe I'll have some more comments about that. So I have started another test knit. Hopefully my last one in a while. As I said before, this is a test knit for Jessie May, Jessie May Martinson of Jessie Made Designs, and I had tested the outline tank, and then she came back and said, well, I've got a kind of a coordinating thing. If you've already tested the outline tank, and I was like, oh, well, I should definitely do that. And now this is, you know, going on the 3rd garment for testing so far this year, which was, I do want to do more testing, but that it's kind of a pace I was not really planning on. So I have started that test knit part 2, and I do have a finished object. I don't have it here. I have already gifted it, but I will put a photo in here. These are my dad's pierogi slipper socks. This is a pattern by Sarah Jordan, PA Knitwit. I'm really happy with the way that these turned out. I had promised my dad a pair of socks for Christmas, and I wound up gifting them to him in his Easter basket. The yarn that I use, this Ella Ray Eco Tweed, is kind of it's a sport weight. It's not a sock weight pattern. It's a sport weight pattern. That yarn worked really well for these. It's kind of like a more durable, maybe a little bit rustic, tweedy yarn, good for dads. The socks turned out absolutely just adorable. It's a really quick knit. It's most of the kind of fiddly stuff is at the beginning. You know, you've got this folded over cuff with some short row shaping to make that little kind of tab at the back of the heel. Then it's sort of a standard sock heel and plain stockinette to the end. So I'm really happy with the way these turned out. I rarely knit things twice. I just don't have the patience for it, but I really want a pair of these for myself. So I will definitely be keeping that pattern in my library. I did purchase the pattern on Ravelry. Sarah also has a pay hip shop. So as you probably know by now, there are a lot of issues with following Ravelry's site redesign last year, where the new site is not accessible for many people. And as of March 31st, they retired. They sort of had an old version running optionally, but they retired that completely now. And that's leaving a lot of people out of, you know, the Ravelry community has been disappointing all around. But many designers are now offering their patterns in multiple ways. So you don't have to go to Ravelry if you don't need to. So anytime I put links in my show notes or the description box below this video, I will, whenever possible, be including links to an Etsy shop, a pay hip shop, a personal website shop, so that you have both of those options there and you do not have to shop on Ravelry. But again, this is it's a big project for a lot of designers to get all of their stuff up on an alternate site, especially because pretty much everybody I talked to said almost everything is still coming from Ravelry, all the sales. So it's a big undertaking. If your favorite designer has not made their patterns available somewhere else yet, you can definitely reach out to them, but also please have patience. But whenever possible, I'm going to be linking to alternatives to Ravelry in the show notes, and Sarah does have a pay hip shop. All right, I have been talking for a long time, and I think that's it for on and off the needles. And now I'm going to show you something really cute that you just got a peek of in that photo of my dad's socks. So like so many of us, especially during the pandemic, I spend probably more hours than necessary browsing around on Instagram, looking at people's knitting projects and puppies and adorable children and things like that. Last month at some point I spotted these and decided that I definitely needed a pair. So look at these adorable sock blockers. The person who makes them is somewhere in Eastern Europe, and I'm not going to say because I don't want to get it wrong. Somewhere in Eastern Europe, but I actually saw them on someone's Instagram who is in Spain. So I spotted them there, and she had tagged the maker, so I went and looked into that, and it turned out she had an Etsy shop. And so the reason I wanted these is that you can adjust the size for blocking your socks. So this fits in here. And of course I'm doing a really bad job of showing you how it works, but you can adjust the size. So if you are knitting socks for your family, you know, people's feet come in different sizes, and most sock blockers, you get them in, you know, small or medium or large, and that's still only 3 kind of variations. So I thought that that was very clever, being able to adjust the size. And then when I went to her website, she had it's an Etsy shop, which obviously I'm going to link in the show notes. She had all kinds of different styles, and you can get them personalized. So I got my name put on them as well. These are obviously a little kind of Christmas wintry, but I thought, you know, socks, knitting, keep that winter cougar vibe alive. So I went with that, but she also had some that were flowers, I think, and maybe some other designs. So it has the foot size printed there on the bottom, and then you just line up this first arrow here with your size. It doesn't have every size, so you can see it's 5, 6, 8, and I am 7.5. So that's not ideal. And, you know, some of these sizes, I don't know what's going on in Eastern Europe, but this just looks a little too, like, this thing. I knit socks for my husband very rarely, because he has large feet, and even that I think would be a stretch. But maybe you know somebody, I don't know. But mostly this is gonna get you through most adult size socks that you want to knit. So I just thought this was really clever, and I am really happy with the purchase for the most part. I guess this is cut with, you know, like a laser. I don't know anything about it, but I guess it's that kind of laser thing that a lot of people are doing now. So my only concern is that the edges are a little rough, and the wood itself is a little maybe rougher than ideal. Probably I could do something about that myself. I have not, and to be honest, I probably won't. I might take, you know, some sandpaper to any parts that seem particularly rough. But overall, I'm really happy with this. I think they're really adorable, and they were really reasonably priced. So I think for the pair, I will double check, but I want to say with shipping, it was like $30 or $35, and that's shipping all the way from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I just don't want to get it wrong. I want to say Ukraine, but now that I've said it, I'm really not sure. Somewhere in Eastern Europe. And again, I will include the link to her shop and to her Instagram in the show notes so that you can find her if you are interested in getting a pair of these for yourself. But they are just darn adorable. Get your name on them. You can hang them up, keep them out of the way. Now, obviously, this part is loose, a little loose, because you need to be able to move it in and out. So I'm not sure how well it would do. I mean, it's if you put them all the way in there, I guess hanging them up might work. But make sure that that's well in there. Otherwise, that might kind of detach and then fall off, and then your dog will eat it, or, you know, whatever other ridiculous thing might happen. But really adorable, really reasonably priced. So cute, and just really clever with the adjustable foot. I think that's so smart. So check these out. I am very happy with them, and I think you will be too. Speaking of shipping things from Europe, I have some stash flash for you that I had to go all the way across the pond to get. I believe I was watching the Tiny Human Knits podcast, which I will, again, include a link in the show notes so you can check out her podcast here on YouTube if you like. She's super crafty, quilts and cross stitch, needlepoint, I don't know, embroidery, I don't know the difference, does that, and obviously knits, and knits very quickly. So she's had some really cute sweaters that she's been sharing lately, and one of the yarns that she kept talking about was Gilead from Durham Natura, which is a French company. And I've also seen it popping up in some other places, and I was like, I gotta try that, definitely. And I have real difficulty finding it in the US. I decided to expand my horizons and look outside the US. I checked the Durham Natura's own website and a couple of places in Canada, and I checked the Zolda site because she does sell a Gilead. Nobody had the color that I wanted. And then finally I found on Loop London, they had one of the colors that was not my 100% preferred color, but was in my maybe. So, and I'm trying to remember, the name of the color I really wanted was Eucalyptus, and just nobody has it. But I got this, which is similar. This one is, however you pronounce sage in French. I took 2 or 3 years of French in college, and I can still read it, and I just can't remember how to pronounce things. So I want to say it's Sauge, but again, I just don't remember. But this is sort of, again, it's getting a little bit blown out, but you can see this is kind of a green, gray, very light. This is a 100% wool, some very special wool from France. It says Merinos d'Arles, which I assume is a certain breed of merino sheep that occupy that particular part of France. So this is soft, but not super duper soft. Still, I think it's next to the skin. And this has a really interesting construction. It is definitely plied, but the way I think that the yarn, the fiber itself is spun before plying is different. And I'm going to include a link in the show notes so you can look it up. But it just has, it's hard to describe. Like, you can definitely see that it's plied, but it also looks almost felted. So I am really excited to try this out. I was originally planning to get enough for a full sweater, but then I found this other pattern that I really, for some reason, is calling my name. It's not even the type of garment that I usually wear. And I want to go ahead and pop a photo in here. This is called the slanting slipover. It is a what in the US we would call a vest, but I know that in British English you call vest something else. I don't know. Anyway, I don't. My knowledge of British English is relatively limited. My apologies. But I thought this would be really cute for that pattern. So I decided, you know, since I haven't used this yarn before, I do think it feels next to the skin, but since I'm not 100% sure, it seems like a vest that's going to go over, you know, something else is a good choice to give it a try with. So I got 3 balls of this for that. And then I was like, well, if I'm having yarn shipped all the way from London, I should really, you know, fill up the box, make it worth my time and the shipping costs. So, Durham Natura has another line of yarn. This is called, I want to say Ulysse. Again, my pronunciation of French is not great, but I do know what it says. So this one is, that one, the The Gilead is like a worsted. This one is more of a DK. And I got a whole sweater's worth of this. And this is just, this color is so pretty. And I forget what on earth pattern I wanted the Gilead originally for. I don't know if I was planning to design, I don't know, I don't even remember. But this, I was looking through my queue and thinking, you know, what kind of eye problems, what do I not have yarn picked out yet for that I want, you know, something that's kind of reasonably priced, maybe something that is a little bit more rustic, because again, this is the same kind of construction that it looks a little bit almost felted. And I came upon the tulip sweater by the Mandarins, and I am going to pop a photo in here. And I blame this one entirely on Taylor from Fiber for the People and the Wool Needles Hands podcast, who just could not stop ranting and raving about her tulip sweater, which turned out beautifully. So, and the yarn used in the original sample for the sweater was something that was a little bit rustic. I don't know off the top of my head. It's something that, you know, B. Mandarins is French but lives elsewhere. I don't know. There's a link in the show notes. Definitely check out her YouTube channel as well, and her designs are beautiful. So that said, the original sample uses a little bit of a more rustic yarn that has zoomed up in my queue thanks to Taylor, and so I thought that would be a good choice for another kind of this more rustic yarn that I haven't tried before, that, you know, is not easy to get your hands on in the US. And since I was having yarn shipped all the way from London, I went ahead and got this as well. So this colorway is called Merlot. I don't know yet if I'm going to go ahead and pair this with a mohair silk or a Surrey alpaca silk or not. The tulip sweater sample is kind of a little bit fuzzy looking. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think it'll be really beautiful with or without it, so we'll see. I wanted to get the dark color because definitely this is something that's not going to get on the needles until much later this year, if not early next year. And I really love this beautiful kind of wine color, and that is right up my alley. So this is kind of a combination segment because I got Stash Flash, but I also got some crystal ball knitting showing two new to me patterns that I'm definitely planning on knitting at some point. I think this is the first time that I have ordered yarn from abroad. I've definitely gotten some yarn from abroad for samples, yarn support, but I think this is the first time I've done any international shopping for my yarn. So I'm sure you will see these in future projects. That is what is new to my stash in this episode. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 38 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. Special thank you to any new viewers who checked out the podcast for the first time. Really appreciate you being here, and an extra special thank you to my Patreon patrons who help keep this podcast up and running. Links to everything that I talked about can be found in the show notes at mediaperduana.com/Hilo-Stitch. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and getting lots of sneak peeks and goodies and behind the scenes details, you can find more information about that at patreon.com/mediaperduana. Here on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, like this episode, leave a comment, share with your friends, all those things that help expand the reach, not just of the podcast, but of the entire channel, which is full of free knitting tutorials. and a few other goodies too. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as May the Better Wanna, and I will see you next time.